welcome back to another Pickled Dragon Unscripted with my dear friend Dracoya over here. She's over there. We are back with another episode, a long overdue episode where I get to rant for several minutes about adventurers in wheelchairs.
We are here for this rant.
This is me ranting. I'm gonna pound my fist, light the torches, get the pitchforks out. But first, Jacoya, what are you drinking?
Today I am drinking a dragon's milk. Good, classic, rich, beautiful beer.
And for me, I'm in a very good mood because the bullet is back. 10-year, baby. I actually asked the fella there at the counter, you guys have the big bottle because it comes in a bottle bigger than this, and apparently only select stores get it. So I told them that they need to be selected.
Oh, I didn't know that. You're drinking the good stuff, huh?
Mm-hmm. I figure you only live once. So, but before we continue, we have a very special sponsor for our videos. I don't know if that's going to get flipped backwards, but Thor makes beautiful rings, and we got a special little
discount
of adventurers divvying up their loot. Okay, and here it goes.
I'll just take the Thorm ring. Thank you very much.
Oh, like hell you will. You can have this, take the Venom Dagger. I'll take the Thorm ring.
Venom Dagger? What am I? Well, actually, that could be useful. No, wait, I'm taking the Thorm ring.
Over my dead body. I can't
believe you would even over your dead body. That could be a ring. I'm going to take this dagger and I'm going to shove it up your...
My ring.
Whether you are looking for truly unique rings to exchange on your wedding day, or simply a statement piece for Renaissance fair or cosplay, look no further than Thorum. Rings fit for the gods. Use promo code PICKLED for 20% off your order.
We're back. Well, she's back. I'm here to rant. Okay.
I'm here for it. I'm here for moral support.
Yes. So adventure. So I think it was like a year ago or so, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, maybe it was more. I don't remember. Where somebody released their idea on a combat wheelchair in the name of inclusivity. And then somebody came out with a line of miniatures of guys in their wheelchairs and gals, I guess. I can't remember all the different genders that were in their wheelchairs or whatnot, but it doesn't matter. But and let's have a disclaimer before we begin the rant. If you want to play a character who's bound to a wheelchair, by all means, go do your thing. If that
whatever makes you happy.
Yeah. But I'm here as somebody in a wheelchair. You know, here I can do this little spinneroonie thing where I go, wee.
Do a spin.
Well, if I do, I'll bang into something right now. But especially after having some of the bullet, I'll bang into something. But in any case, as somebody who is a wheelchair user, I think I have a very unique perspective on this, because so far when I went through social media, and granted, there's probably some wheelchair user out there that has no problem with this whatsoever, and they love the fact that they can wheel their chair into the Forgotten Realms or wherever they want to go with abandon and glee, and I say more power to them.
But this is how you feel. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who probably agree with you or see your point.
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess I start out by saying, when I make a hero, if I were a player in a game, I have no idea why anyone would want to play a disabled person. Well, a wheelchair-bound person. And, you know, And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that people don't really understand how miserable it is to be bound in a wheelchair. So, you know, and again, it's as me as a DM too. I like to blend a very realistic feel into my game. So in other words, I think it's easier for players to be able to place themselves in the mindset of being there if there is some sort of hook of reality into what they're doing and how they're playing.
As far as,
Well, so for example, if if they actually have to worry about feeding themselves, where their water is going to come from, resting and
yeah, that's what makes it fun. You have to actually care about your rations, care about how many arrows you have.
Yeah, I mean, and that sounds like a lot of housekeeping, a lot of bookkeeping, but it goes beyond that. Like being able to rationally explain how or why something happens and being able to wrap your head around it. Yes, the gods exist in this realm. Some people will say God exists. I'm not going to take a stance on that because that's not why I'm here.
That's not what we're talking about.
But it feels like to me that it would feel if I were told you have to play a character in a wheelchair, it would be like extremely patronizing to me for a DM to say, but everything's going to be accessible to you. Don't worry. Like the villains have to adhere to some ADA standard, like Americans with Disability, standard. Every aisle has to be so many feet wide, and every doorway, every wheelchair should be able to go through. I mean, the first time that a character comes up to a set of stairs, for example, what the hell are they going to do? Well, the other players are going to have to haul their asses up the stairs or even down the stairs. And you made a good point, Dracoya, that you mentioned that it's a magical world,
right. So you could create a magical wheelchair like Professor X that just floats. You don't have to worry about the stairs. You don't have to worry about the gravel. You don't have to worry about your arms. So what about that?
Yeah, and but but where is that line drawn for the DM then?
That's true.
Is it a dick move to have a villain just come dump him out of the chair? Because let me tell you something. If you ever fall out of your chair, getting back in the chair, I'm sure you've seen videos of it.
Yeah, it's not a fun experience.
It is beyond hard. It is extremely difficult to pull yourself from the ground into a chair. And, when you're talking like a round is 6 seconds in combat, right? A villain has just jumped you on your ass, right? And around 6 seconds. It takes several minutes for you to haul your ass back into your chair, unless you have a very low injury, meaning that you have use of your upper extremities, like your abdomen and stuff. Or, you're just some super buff guy, right? But other than that, it's several minute. It's like donning and doffing plate mail armor, essentially. It's 10 minutes or whatever it takes you to haul your butt in there, and that's with no help. But is it a dick move for the DM to do that? Is there a limit to what the DM should be allowed to do in those cases? To purposely put obstacles in the way of a person in a wheelchair? Is it
you did make a really good point. I mean, when you're going out traveling, you're adventuring, right? You're in a forest, you have to set up encampments, you have to set up your fires. But when you're in a wheelchair, it's not that simple. It takes hours to do a lot of things before bed and when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, when I wake up in the morning, from the time I wake up to the time I'm actually ready to do everything I need to do in the day, it takes 3 hours. And a lot of those things are medically necessary things. You can't say, oh, 3 hours. What are you, like, doing your hair for 3 hours? No, I'm not doing my hair for 3 hours. There are medically necessary things that happen in that time,
Right.
you know, including bathing and all other stuff. But
And if you're putting a wheelchair in it, then you should probably put all the things that come along with being in a wheelchair, like the inconvenience. So the DMs that are like, oh, well, we just won't make it, you know, you're just instantly fine. Well, then why have a wheelchair to begin with?
yeah, exactly. You know, and in that note, like, where does the accessibility portion end? You know, like, should there be adventurers for people who had injuries like Christopher Reeves, where you could only turn his head? You know, we got to be accessible. You know, where do we draw the line? You know, and you know, there's a lot of, most of what's horrific about being in a wheelchair happens behind the scenes. You know, like, people don't see what a wheelchair user does in the mornings. They don't see what a wheelchair user has to do to get ready for bed. And so when I see those miniatures, and I think about the idea of somebody wanting to play a character in a wheelchair, I think to myself, you know, why in the hell would you ever do that? Now,
it must be really infuriating, actually.
It is infuriating. Now, but that said, I'm famous amongst all my gaming groups for having what's called the disfigurement chart. So in 5e, if you take 2 failed death saves, you have to roll on this chart. And it's a massive chart, but one of the results is that you're paralyzed. So
I was going to ask about that.
So in that case, the player didn't choose to be paralyzed. To me, that's different. Like, suddenly they're confronted with all these issues that they'll have to overcome. And knowing all of those issues, you better believe I would saddle them with every pain in the ass thing that there is. But
right.
The thing is it's also a world with spells like regenerate and heal. And so at that point, you know, and adventurers, you know, unless you're first level or second level, you're probably rolling in enough gold to go and get that spell cast.
Right.
So again, what's the point again of starting a player in a wheelchair? It just, to me, it just baffles the mind. And I just messed up my hair. I'm just gonna fix that.
Well, I think the thing that you had mentioned to me is that when you play your video games, when you play your tabletop, when you play your board game, the point of it is to escape the real world, to live in a dream world for a while, where you have magic with all of your friends, where you combat aliens, where you rescue princesses. That's the point. And when you are trying to play all this in a wheelchair, how far away from reality are you really getting? You're not escaping reality. You're making your fantasy world more hard,
A nightmare world. And granted, like, we're all in the game, we're all heroes, and we're confronting the nightmares. But what is, you know, being in a wheelchair, the nightmare is you, right? Or and I don't mean that like to say that people in wheelchairs are less or are nightmare people to be around.
No, I think what you're saying is that this is a struggle and it's a nightmare of a situation.
Exactly. And, you know, and then I think about just the act of adventuring, like pushing your wheelchair through gravel, through mud, through anywhere that's not a nice paved or tiled surface. You will burn your arms out in like under 10 minutes easily.
Oh yeah, no way. I can like barely even I can't do a pull up. If my life depended on me doing a pull up, that sucks.
I have had to train on wheelchair. I did wheelchair races, and that's on a nice flat surface, but to train for it, they make you go off road, and like by 10 feet, you're just like digging through gravel, or if you hit a rut, you're suddenly toppled over. Or, I mean, it is a nightmare. And I can't imagine what like a wilderness adventure would be like, or even like a dungeon adventure. Even I've rolled over cobblestones before, and even that was
Yeah.
very difficult. Any kind of uneven terrain where you might tilt is a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's
And
baffling.
you don't always, depending on your body and what's happened, you don't have the ability to adjust your body weight to one side or the other to counterbalance the uneven ground.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and again, people are going to say it's a fantasy world. They should be able to just roll with it. But at that point, like, why are you disabled then? Like, let's say the DM makes everything accessible.
Right.
What is the point of being in the wheelchair? Because suddenly it's not even a disability. Like, your character is going through life, going through the adventure, I should say, with no additional hardships as the other players. So what's the point at that point? You know, like what you know, you you get to say I'm in a wheelchair and I've overcome, but what did you really overcome? You know?
Yeah.
Um,
Like you said, there's a line between inclusivity and just patronizing. There is a line, and it sounds like for you, this whole thing of them trying to include you and incorporate all the disabilities into your fantasy world is more patronizing, because you and I both know that the execs have never had this experience. They don't realize how, your word, nightmare it can be. And to push that into your escape is infuriating.
yeah, and you know, and the last thing I really have to say on this is like, and I touched on it earlier, but what limits then should a DM be under? Like, is it a dick move to steal the chair or purposely target the chair with attacks, or
Or insult the person because that they've got a chair.
yeah, you know, is there a line that shouldn't be crossed? And again, as soon as you start removing all of these hardships and all of these logical things that the villains would do, you know, is it really a disability at that point? Are you really
Including,
inclusive? Are you really
yeah.
demonstrating that there's a reason why people in wheelchairs have such a hard time? And you know, you don't see an action hero in a wheelchair, you know, and there's a reason, right? There's a reason. And you know, just to close this out, I just got to say that you know, you do you play your wheelchair guy with as many disadvantages or advantages as you want, but for me,
You're allowed to feel however you want to feel, Matt. You don't have to justify it to the masses. I know there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with us, who disagree with the things you're saying. I know you might get some hate, but you are allowed to feel and think whatever you want.
I'll
It's
drink
okay.
that. So until next time, my friends, come on back and have another round on us.